She seemed to be a person who liked to please people. Is that?
In a way, yes. I mean, there's a sense in which she was probably the nicest person, or one of the nicest people I've ever known, and certainly, you know, when it comes to authors, probably the least narcissistic of any. But that isn't all that she was, and nice is much too bland a word. She has such an astute, sharp mind, and I mean, you can see in this book, it's not only interviews, there's also an essay, and I've included some letters from her, and among the letters is one she wrote me about Flaubert's Parrot by Julian Barnes, because she liked Flaubert. She had read a lot of his letters and so on, and so she assumed that, people assumed that she would love that book, Flaubert's Parrot, and she hated it, and in the letter it was so funny because she came across a diary or a note, or I guess she kept diaries, notebooks I guess it would be, where she had a virulent response against the book. I mean, just visceral, tore it to shreds. Felt that basically Barnes had co-opted Flaubert, and the best things in the book were written by Flaubert, and he was just riding on his coattails. And in the letter, she sort of said, why was I so upset? You know, what had I eaten for breakfast that day? So I mean, she wasn't just like a nice lady. She was a very sharp thinker, and I love her, listening to her. I mean, I love her responses to books. A lot of our exchanges were about books and writing, because and reading, but especially reading. She was not only a really good writer, she was a really good reader.
How did it go from being a professional, you know, across the microphone relationship to being a friendship? Because it's that professional distance is important on both sides, you would think.
Well, it's fairly unusual for me, and certainly with respect to my radio interviews, it's rare that I will then get to know the person and become friends with them. I think it's because for the first big interview I did with her was for print, and when you do things for print, you have, at least I have, more opportunities, a longer time together, a longer stretch. You're looking for more things. It's not just you've got your hour and you're out. So I decided when I read Swan, a Mystery, I'd met Carol previously and had reviewed some of her books, but I didn't really feel close to her or anything. When I read Swan, a Mystery, I really loved that book. It came out in the fall of '87. And I was just on my way out. I'd been one of the editors of a feminist literary quarterly out of Vancouver, but by then I'd moved to Toronto. And I decided I wanted to do a special issue on Carol, and it ended up being a double issue, but it involved sort of a day-long interview. In fact, it took place over 2 days, because in the special issue, it was a really long interview. And it also meant I was something about sort of a commissioning editor, because we needed some short pieces from her. So she would send me some stories, and we had an exchange over that. And it was really, and I was asked for some photographs to illustrate the book, and it was really around that we got to know each other and became friends. And then once I had all this material and all this big interview, I also decided I was a contributing editor of Books in Canada, so I wrote a cover story about Carol for Books in Canada. And I remember joking, saying I wasn't going to make her a cottage industry, but it was around that we really got to know each other. And I think I just discovered later that it was really important for her at that time to get that kind of attention, because I think she felt she had been sort of dismissed as a domestic novelist or something, and that it meant a lot. Her writing had changed. She was writing much more adventurously, more experimentally, although I like the early books too. But subsequently, when she won a Governor General's Award for Stone Diaries, among the people she thanked me for feeding her courage. I was very touched by that, I didn't really know it. I hadn't realized that, but what she meant by that was that at that point, when the earlier period when she started writing more these different kinds of books, obviously paying that kind of attention meant a lot to her.
I love the interviews because they sort of form the backbone of the book, but then the letters are this other side of it, where she lets down a bit more of her guard.
The reason I included the letters was to give a different angle on her, a slightly different perspective, because it would be her describing things and her responses to things, and not just thinking in terms of addressing her own work. The other thing, of course, is that these interviews were for broadcast, so when you're speaking for broadcast, generally you try to formulate your thoughts in a clear way and outline what you want to do in your work and approach it that way. But I think particularly, as you were saying, as the interviews go on, and particularly in the later ones, and after she became ill, I think there's more there. I mean, they're less inhibited.
What do you think you got out of the friendship?
I felt it was a real gift to know Carol. And there's no single thing I can point to, like she didn't teach me A or B, but I think she was really an inspiring human being. She was so generous and so open and so engaged with the world. And as she says somewhere, she managed to, for some reason, I think it's significant that it was her character, to retain her curiosity virtually to the end. She was always interested in people. She was open to people. People were writing her once she started having, there were articles published in the New York Times Magazine and Canadian Living and so on when she was ill, and she would get all kinds of mail from all kinds of people who she didn't know, and she would unfailingly respond and be open to it and not sort of turn in and shut down or do anything. She was really inspiring. So I'd like to hold that idea in my mind of someone who, I mean, I don't think I, in a sense, live up to it, but I think that's certainly part of what I got from the friendship. What I got from the friendship on a daily, ongoing basis was just having having the benefit of this really astute mind and just enjoying her wit and her view of just about anything.
The book is Random Illuminations. I'm speaking with the author Eleanor Wachtel, and Random Illuminations: Conversations with Carol Shields, published by Gooseland.